You're not the boss of me. There's a balance of raising strong girls without wanting to crush their spirit. I always say, like, I always idolized the Spice Girls and wanted to have a Spice Girl daughter of my own. But then I realized how difficult it truly is. And so that's sort of where this all generated from, where I've been working actually with Rachel and been trying to figure out, I have a son and now a daughter, how we're going to, how can we make a girls' mom academy kind of like she has a boys' mom academy to help moms like us who are raising really strong-willed girls, where I don't want them to lose their spark and their excitement, but also balance. I need them to put on their pajamas or I need them to get out the door and put on their shoes. So
Or get
today,
off
just
their phones if they're older, or yeah.
right. And so I wanted to just quickly, we're going to do an agenda, just go through everything so we all have clear expectations. So we're going to do a round of introductions, some education, a discussion, and then I always want to make sure there's a takeaway and action, as I'm that kind of woman that's like, okay, now I got to go do. Um, so really quick, I'll introduce myself, and then Rachel can go, and then Mena would love to hear more about your four daughters. So, my name is Brooke Shapiro. I am the founder of Sprinkles Parents. I support families in the Bay Area with education, activities, and resources. I have an 8-year-old son, which is how I met Rachel Sklar when I was really struggling with how to raise a strong-willed boy. And so I thought when I'd have my second child, who's a girl, I'd have everything figured out because nothing, was harder than raising a boy to me. As I am not a boy, I didn't understand what that dynamic was like. And anything that my son works for him, my daughter takes with a grain of salt and is like, thank you. That's like a nice suggestion, but I'm not going to listen to you. And so my 5-year-old daughter is also named Raina, which is Queen, as many of you guys know. So she really takes that to heart and only orders others and doesn't seem to take any orders. So, wanna just talk about with all of us here, what one challenge is this week and why did it bother you? So we can work through together what that looks like for raising daughters and what type of a pilot and program for a Girl Mom Academy could be really helpful to support more moms like you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rachel to introduce herself and then
Yeah.
go
Thanks,
from
Brooke. And thank you so much for creating this space. So for those who may not know me yet, especially who are listening on the recording, I'm a parenting coach, an educator, speaker, and I've been working with families for over 16 years. Actually, it's almost 17 now because my oldest son is turning 19 in September. And I started parent coaching in 2009. Anyway, so I have three boys, and because of that, I specialize in helping moms raise strong-willed boys. Because I have three of my own. They're now, like I said, turning 19, just 17 and 13. And they are so, so different from each other. And I'm very motivated to learn what it takes to keep a close relationship with them over time and to raise them to have a healthy relationship with power so that they are not growing up to be the kind of men in our society who I think have an unhealthy relationship with power. And I started the Boy Mom Academy as a way of creating community, but also a way of raising the next generation of men differently. And so I'm on a mission to change the world one boy at a time. And thanks to Brooke, is a visionary and saw that the content inside my Boy Mom Academy is very relevant for her as a parent of a daughter. And so it's interesting as I was preparing for today, I would be really thinking a lot about power and about how we want our girls to step into their power. And in some ways, we're asking our boys to step down from their power. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that dynamic today. Um, and so, yeah, so I'm a parenting coach and educator, and I don't have daughters, but I am a
there.
daughter.
Right? A lot of that comes up when raising kids, I feel like. Mena, would you like to go and share a challenge?
I don't know about challenges. I sometimes I reflect on how the family dynamic and think, wow, it's not that bad because I hear so many other moms and their challenges. I mean, and recently I've been working with an executive function coach, and we've gotten our time challenges under control mostly. So I guess that's my biggest
I'm
challenge.
snapping for you. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is a big deal. Um, but yeah,
How old are your
that
daughters?
they are 19, 16, 11 going on 12, and 8 going on 9 pretty soon.
Nice.
Got
Oh,
a
you have
10-year
some.
spread.
Yeah, I have a 10-year gap from oldest to youngest.
Yeah. And you work with a lot of parents, Mena. I just want to name that also.
Yeah.
If you're open, would you mind sharing what you do?
Yeah, so I am a holistic practitioner. So I work with herbs, I work with functional nutrition, health and wellness coaching, laughter yoga leader, and I'm also an educator at the university level. And my work is with moms and women. So, in fact, yesterday I was meeting with someone who had been wanting to work with me for a good long time. Um, and she said that I show up for women. And
Mm.
so I thought that was the biggest compliment, and I appreciated, felt very seen. And so that's what I do. My clinic is for women of all ages. Doesn't matter if they're girls that are, little to perimenopause and beyond. Um, I obviously work with spouses when I work my trying to conceive clients, and so that's a obviously the spouse needs to be part of that, and that's where I support the family, and I support moms who have challenges with boy health as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm in the girl sphere.
I want to amplify what you just said, that you show up for women. I mean, I see you all the time showing up in community and lifting others. I thank you for that. Yeah.
So
Thank
how,
you for
so I
being
think that's a really great segue of how do we get more girls and women and
here.
our daughters to also, show up for each other, right? As we hear a lot of these girls who I don't think, they're 50% lose their confidence by ninth grade, which is really sad to see as we all see these little girls that like are, they have spark and their energy and their light and something by the time they're in ninth grade, they start to lose it, right? And we want them to keep it. And we don't want girls to be trying to bring each other down. We really want more girls to be lifting each other up. And so the 8 out of the 10 skipped an activity because they didn't like their body and how they looked. And then thinking about their body image starts as early as 6 years old. And so there's just this double standard, which is something that I've been have since I've had this daughter, really has been kind of in the back of my mind where we say we want her to be brave and independent, I can do it, and curious and confident. But then at the same time, I can't tell you how many times I just visited my family and they were saying, oh, she's a brat, she's spoiled, she's stubborn, she's dramatic, she's so bossy, right? We say girl boss, and that doesn't really set girls, frankly, up for success. And so I think, Rachel has put together a mini session to sort of talk about these power dynamics that we have for our girls. And so I'll kind of hand it over to Rachel to talk about that.
Thank you. Those statistics about girls are so disheartening, Brooke. I'm glad you shared them.
Right?
Yeah, I want to start with a little exercise. This will be fun to do, especially for you, Mena. Do you have like, for anyone listening, if you have multiple girls, it might be helpful to kind of choose your girl who you're holding most in your heart for this conversation. Sometimes you have one that's more challenging than others, or you have more worry about how she's going to grow up, given her personality. And so, just starting with a little exercise that I also do with the boy moms in the group, is I want you to imagine yourself walking into a cafe to meet your 25-year-old daughter. Just like imagine, there you are, you're walking in, you're meeting for coffee. And as you walk in, you quickly reflect, like, how were the teenage years? How did those go? And how is it now? How are things between you? What qualities do you hope that she has as that 25-year-old? Do you hope that she has a strong voice, that she knows who she is and what she thinks, and she knows how to advocate for herself? Do you want her to be able to powerfully say no to things that don't serve her? Do you want her to never blindly follow someone just because they're in a position of authority? Do you want her to be confident, independent, strong? And just imagine her. What are the qualities you want her to have? And now I want you to imagine her right now, today. And I want you to ask yourself, what are you doing right now to make that 25-year-old a reality? What are your strategies? And you might be giving yourself a big pat on the back, or you might be saying to yourself, wow, there are some things I should probably reconsider, or some tools that I need in my tool belt to get that outcome. Either way is fine, or in both, right? But there's really a paradox in raising girls and boys too, but it's a different one. Like I said, like we want their relationship with power. Like when I in my Boy Mom Academy, we talk about we want their relationship with power to be about consensuality and safety and not overpowering others, to almost step back from the power that they were inherently given by virtue of being male in our society. But with girls, we want them to step into their power, to have a strong presence, to be a self advocate, to be able to show up as who they are, authentically are, and not ever apologize for that. And, when I was a little girl, my mom used to say, maybe when I was a teenager, she told me this, I'm trying to raise you with an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out, right? I want you to be independent, but not so independent that you never get married or you abandon your family and your family's values, right? And so some of the exact qualities that we desperately want in our daughters, right? And we want them to have as adults can actually be incredibly challenging when they're children, right? And so I think the question becomes, it's not like how do we get her to be how do we get her to stop being so strong-willed, but like how do we help our daughters learn to take the strength that's inside of them and be skillful at using it in their lives, right? How do we raise a girl who can advocate for herself without being rigid or thinking that her way is the only way, right? How do we raise her so that she questions authority when it's wrong without ever being disrespectful, who holds boundaries while also respecting other people's boundaries, having this really healthy balance, right? That's the real work in my mind. Last night, I was at my women's group. Every other week I meet with a group of 10 women and we always grapple with a question at each group. And the question last night, I actually hosted the group, and the question last night was, what quality in yourself do you find yourself apologizing for? And where did that come from? And what would your life be like if you gave up that insecurity? Right? And what was fascinating to me, especially in the context of, having that conversation right before this conversation, is the number of women who said that they are just apologizing for who they are, right? Just that they grew up having to hide who they really were and apologize for who they really were and then be someone different in order to feel like they could make it. And when we asked what would it be like if you gave that up, what amazing amount of freedom people saw for themselves, right? We talked about the sort of mother wound and how a lot of them apologizing for themselves came from a childhood in which their mother wanted them to be different than they were actually, right? And so what's the antidote to that? How do we prevent that? And I think I think for me, it's that we as parents, and this applies to boys too, is that we confuse cooperation with obedience, right? I talk with a lot of moms about the difference between raising an obedient child versus a cooperative one, because obedience says, you do this because I said so. There's authority and power over you. Cooperation says, you do this because we're part of a family, we're a team. We have needs, we have responsibilities, and we are going to figure out as a group how to make this work. Right? In fact, that's the third step of my four-step framework for raising boys. Okay. It's about getting alignment and cooperation and collaboration. Now, it doesn't mean kids get an equal vote on everything. You're still the parent. Some things are non-negotiable. Safety's non-negotiable. Going to school is non-negotiable, right? Although we have a lot of school refusal, right? You don't get to hurt people because you're angry, but you don't have to win every power struggle in order to be in charge. In fact, I would rather you have strategies that help you sidestep power struggles altogether. And instead of saying, getting into a power struggle with your daughter, I want you to invite her into a conversation where we stand shoulder to shoulder and we solve problems together. And I think that's how we raise a child who can advocate for themselves and have a voice in a relationship, right? And so, this core principle of having power with your daughter, not power over her, is going to help her never apologize for what she has to say in a collaboration conversation, right? And so, like practically speaking, instead of saying, I have told you 3 times, like, go clean your room already, power over, right? Power with might sound like, hey, we prioritize having a tidy house when friends come over. It's respectful to them. So let's make a plan for getting your room clean before your friends come, right? So the expectation hasn't gone away, right? I'm not giving up. I'm saying, hey, you have an equal ownership in this conversation, and we are both expected to work together to make life work, right? And wouldn't it be amazing if she was in a marriage someday that was like, hey, we work together to make life work, right? That she's learning that from you, right? Or maybe if you have an older child who won't get off her phone, right? She's on social media. Like power over might be like, give me the phone now. I'm done arguing with you. I'm turning off the internet, right? Whereas power with or collaboration might be a prevention strategy that's like, hey, I've noticed every night we fight about social media and you getting off your phone, and I'm not enjoying that part of our lives. And I don't think you like it either. So let's come up with a plan that we both like. What do you think would help? Right? So now we're on the same side of the problem. We're standing shoulder to shoulder. And this is what I mean in my work when I talk about alignment. That's my step 3 of my 4-step framework. We're not aligning with what they want. We're aligning with a plan that we all can get on board with. And so it's not permissive parenting, but it is very powerful, power sharing parenting, right? It's warm, it's collaborative, it still holds a boundary. And I think, one of the most important things we can teach a strong girl is your voice matters. And so do other people's voices. And your boundaries matter. And so do other people's boundaries, right? And you can disagree with someone. We don't need to defeat them. We don't have to be in a war here, right? We don't have to be in a tug of war over this. We can drop the rope, get together, and make a plan. And that's the kind of daughter I imagine being in a really healthy relationship with you and with everyone else in her life when she ages, right? We want we want her strong personality that she may have to translate into a strength of character. And her temperament will adjust as she grows, right? Into that. So, okay, so I kind of want you to, I want to have a takeaway like Brooke said. So in a moment with your daughter where you maybe are seeing a power struggle start to bubble, or you're having some self-doubt about how to handle something, right? An interesting question you can ask yourself is to look at her and say, what quality am I seeing in her that I want her to keep in life, right? She's being persistent with you. She's being confident with you, right? Maybe she's taking a strong leadership. Maybe she knows her mind. Or maybe alternatively, she's being people pleasing, right? She's giving up, but you see that as being empathetic, right? And so, what is the quality that you're seeing in her in this moment that you want her to keep over time? And then, how can you help her use that quality more skillfully? We don't want to eliminate it, but we want her to use it more skillfully. And so, that's something I teach all of my clients to learn what are their child's strengths, like really get to know them deeply, and then leverage those exact things when the going gets rough. Okay. So you want her to use her strengths to push back appropriately when the time is right and the moment calls for it. And she is learning and practicing that exact skill in her relationship with you every single day. And so you want to play your cards right, right? So today's conversation is really kind of like an exploration into the things that I tell all of my clients, moms of boys and girls. I privately meet with girls, and then in group settings, the Boy Mom Academy. But we want to see, like, would it be interesting to create a community of moms who are doing this and who are stumbling through it and who are wanting to raise women who have this tremendous confidence, like Brooke said, like where they're not losing their confidence in ninth grade and never getting it back, right? Um, so the Boy Mom Academy was, like I said, created specifically around my work with moms of boys. But as you can see, like a lot of what I teach is really about relationships and power and cooperation, and it's about emotional regulation and really setting kids up for success. So I'm going to turn it back over to Brooke, but I want to sort of see, what are you interested in exploring in this conversation? Yeah, and what resonates, what feels different about raising boys versus girls, and what kind of support would really help you. So, Brooke, I'm going to turn it back over to you and have you open it up for whatever's next.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. That I actually wanted to share, if that's okay, what I put jotted down. If
Sure.
that's, I think we have some time, and Men, I would love to hear from you too. I just think what was funny when we talked about double standards literally a second ago, and the first thing I put for my daughter was she looked stylish and beautiful walking in the room, which is not something that I would ever have put for my son, right? Like I'd never be like, oh, he looks so great. And so I just thought that was like, and the second thing I put was about her like having a healthy relationship with a partner, but that's not something I would have ever thought about with my son, right? Like I don't think about my son being in a non-abusive relationship or, something like that. You always think of it as your daughter being in that type of relationship. So I just thought it was really interesting. Those two qualities always just come up for girls, and it's kind of that dichotomy. Um, but I think, just kind of like what you were saying is like, and Mena, I'd love to hear from you too, is like, how could, Rachel or me or whoever, like, what would be more supportive? Because there is this different dynamic of a daughter than a son, but there's so many tools that really are the same across both, and figuring out like what would be helpful, or, what needs to be created that's unique, and what's, existing and can be used across the board. And like for me, like it was just that really came up as like this like brainwashing we have, I think, from a young age is like, I always tell the story. My son came from the hospital and he had this cute little bonnet, like an easy hat on. And then my daughter came home from the hospital and they had this giant bow on her head and it cricked her neck. And my mom bought her this outfit that like was like ruffled. So like she was, couldn't breathe because it had all these like fluffy things. And like, why is it so much harder for our daughters the minute they are born, versus our like,
Well,
like,
you just said it, Brooke. You're swimming in it also,
yeah, I mean, it's
right?
been so ingrained
You,
into me.
and when you imagine her at 25 years old, you're imagining her walking in like stylish and, so you're also swimming in these, expectations and double standards, and then
Right.
it becomes a generational cycle.
And so I think we all need to try and break that one. And frankly, if as much work as we do to create these great men,
Mhm.
we don't want them to have, they need to have a good partner who's also, has that expectation and understands respect, and, will have a good relationship with their mother-in-law and have a good relationship with their own moms, right? Because if these, if pretending they're straight, right? We can't assume, but like wherever that is, we need to make sure both, or I would like to, make sure both sides can grow up to have these values and know these skills, however we can.
And have great communication skills. Yeah. How about you, Mena? What's coming up for you, just generally?
Well, I was blessed to have four girls, but also my generation above me, it's just, or my generation is just two girls. So I grew up with a girl. And my cultural experience is such that there's a huge double standard of boys, girls. And I grew up myself fighting it. So I would always at the table voice my opinion of how I didn't like how boys were treated versus girls. And it also came up when the sex talks came up with my mom, where it's like, well, if you raised me right, you know that I'm going to not be with somebody who's not going to respect me. That ticked her off, but I was breaking that already as a teen. And so for me, and I studied feminist theory in college. So then combining my cultural experience, combining my studies and my work with women, I decided as a parent, and my husband was brought up by women. We decided we were doing the boy girl stuff with toys. Our girls had toys that are for boys. I didn't do any of those bows. My girls took them all off. And so when you ask the cafe, question, all I could think of was just their personality characteristics. There was nothing about appearance, was nothing about style, because that's not what we emphasize. We emphasize being well, body, mind, and soul. And so I know that I've personally done a lot of work from being a teen on, and then my own kids. And of course, I'm sure there's some challenges because, of course, first thing we were talking about behind the scenes is World Cup, and then, bringing up girl sports. So I think there's still things there, but I do a lot of work where I reframe the wording for women, grown women, right? Because when it comes to health, often I find women are in a space where they don't self-advocate because when they're with a medical professional, very often they don't allow that. And so I see it as the word works in progress as a whole, if we're talking about women as a whole from birth on, where we are continually seeing these signals. And it's a question of like, I think I'm raising girls like that. I have one who people would probably call a sassy pants, but um, we're working on that.
Yeah, which daughter did you keep in mind when we did the cafe?
So I'm a very visual and meditative person, so I was kind of, and my practice has always been I kind of leapfrog or go back and forth, and so my eldest, I'm totally confident that she's going to be fine. Got to pay attention to the excess empathy, or what did you say? Skilled use of empathy, Rachel? So I got to work on skillful use of empathy with her. With another one, it was about some of the executive functioning. That's what I was thinking about. Another one, I think I was thinking about the voice. Sometimes it goes from meek to really like, I've had it. So we have to work on her balance, right? And then I have a little sassy one that is quite a leader.
Mm, yeah.
But she doesn't balance her leadership skills in a way that works in relationship to the rest of the
But
family.
is that because she's still learning how, or do you feel like what's in her way? Her age?
I think it's her age. Yeah, I think she's still there. Because we talk about it all the time. We
Mhm.
talk about it. It's like, well, is this how you want someone to talk to you? And things like this. But and it sinks in, and but then it repeats, and I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna be patient with this one.
Yeah. So one of the things we say in the academy is that behavior comes from four places. Okay.
Mhm.
So hold her in her mind in your mind as I say.
Okay.
Okay. So first it comes from developmental stage, right? How
Mhm.
old is she and where is she developmentally? Next would be it would come from her personality, her temperament.
Mhm.
What was
Mhm.
she born with as far as just a personality? Like
Yeah.
some kids are just born with a firecracker personality and they have them the day they're born and they take them to their deathbed, right?
Yeah.
And their temperament is adaptable over time in certain
Mhm.
circumstances, but that comes with developmental stage. So we have developmental stage, we have inborn temperament, then we have their neurochemistry, right?
Mhm.
Whether they're neurodivergent, whether they're medicated, like their
Mhm.
behavior is also dictated by that neurological piece. And then the last is environment, right? Which is
Yeah.
which is the only thing we can control at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
what you're doing so beautifully is you're patterning a message.
Yeah.
And you with your environment plus the other three factors, right?
Yeah.
That you're influencing. And so I love that you're like not giving up on patterning this message for her in the environment and not shaming her, not making her wrong for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Again, you don't want her to ever grow up to have to apologize for it because at some point she realizes that she grew up being told. I actually have a follow-up question for both of
Mhm.
you. What messages did you get from your mother
Mhm.
about being a woman that you either do want to pass on or don't want to pass on?
Tell you what I hated.
Okay.
There are two, and they're body image ones. One was at 8 years old, I was told it was time to get makeup. So nope, fat like nope. Um, and then the other one was a body image that I also saw her sister modeling on me. So I am the type of person who has a bubble butt, right? So there's got a little bit in the trunk, and I was developmentally still a little bit chubby in the belly. And I had an incident where my aunt was pushing my bum in my tummy went out and then she pushed it back and it made me feel horrible because not only was it verbal, it was also a physical thing. So we don't talk about body other than in systemic health, right? Because yeah.
Yeah. What about messages that you may have gotten or not gotten about, about your value outside of something physical?
Okay, so for me to go to school, it was you need to get an education in case your husband can't take care of you
Wow.
or something happens to your husband. That comes from my old world culture. But here I was in the United States going to school, going, say what? Because she had gone to school,
Yeah.
right?
Like not there are better reasons to get an education, but this
Right.
is the main reason.
So I always tell my daughters, you need to get an education so that you can be sustainable for yourself, right? And what that looks like, family or not, solo, whatever, it's for you. And it's never in my book because I rejected that. I said, I always tell my girls, Vova, which is grandma, um, said a really good thing, but she could have stopped right there before saying, so that if, right?
Gosh, and what I love about that, and then I wanted to hear from you too, Brooke, but what I love about what you just said is something that I think is so important, which is transparency and
Mhm.
teaching them through this, like teaching them the whole lesson, right? So you're like, hey, my mom used to tell me this, and here's what was wrong with that message, and here's how we can correct it, versus just telling them what you want them to know.
Yeah.
Because then we raise critical thinkers,
Mhm.
right?
Mine are pretty critical thinkers.
I bet. I'm not surprised knowing you.
Yeah.
How about you, Brooke?
My parents actually said they'd only pay for college if I had an MRS at the end. So I actually got married at 21. Um, so that my dad like did the credit card cutting at my wedding ceremony, and like that's all I had to do was get married. They didn't care if I had an education or what, just so I could be off their hands and their balance sheet. And then the other message I constantly got as a girl was like, dress and act like a lady. Like, you have to have your hair done. You have to, why is your hair all over the place? It has to be away from your face. You have to wear a dress. Why aren't you wearing a dress and wearing pants? Like, I'd have to sneak pants, I remember growing up, because they didn't let me wear pants or like me wearing pants. I had to look like very feminine, and whatever clothes I picked, it couldn't be something that like a boy could wear. Another message that I used to get was always like, we have to do what your father says. He makes the money. He makes the money, so we have to do whatever your father is saying. The men, whatever the men want, we all have to bend backwards and do. Like it's his person. Like if he's upset, we all have to, make him feel better. Or your brother, oh, he's having a temper tantrum. We all got to stop and like take care of your brother's needs. Like it was always put the man's needs before myself. And that was sort of again just ingrained to me. It's like whatever the boy needs, like if I had a Sophie Choice a kid, it'd always be the son, and making sure Jace was okay. And even today, my parents only care really about it's like, is Jace okay? What's going on with Jace? And they, Raina they think she's an actress and like she's a brat and she's spoiled, but that's how her personality comes off to, I think, some generations and traditions.
When you shared that, I just felt like so much constriction in my gut and my chest.
So,
Wow, that's intense.
right? And so that's sorry, Rachel. I know I came to you and was like, well, I need something for girls because I don't want her to become another woman in society that's, has to get married young and has to, give into whatever the boy needs because of he has more needs than her, whatever that glass child is. And so I think it's just so important that we have tools to have some kind of tools to raise strong-willed girls so they can speak up, know what's not true, what's,
Yeah,
true and
I
not,
see why you're so committed to this mission. And I acknowledge you, right? Like you're like, I want to break the generational cycle here. And I can't do it alone because that's how generational cycles work, right? They need a wrench to help them turn the other direction. Yeah, I can share a couple of mine. I've done a lot of work on these over the years, and it doesn't always seem to change, like to move the needle is enough. But one message I got was, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And if you've ever met me, you know that like it is so hard for me to watch other people do things when I think I could do it better. And it's, it's like it's a curse in a way because it makes it very hard to delegate and it's a constant process of letting go. And what it means is that I have way too much on my plate all the time and that my self-care is in the toilet. And so it's constant work on that, right? So that was one message that my mom gave me. If you want it done right, do it yourself. The other one is, if you want it done, give it to a busy person. Busy people do more. And so stay busy, you know, and and look for busy people in your life. But what does that create? Like that just creates like a lot of doing, and not a lot of being,
Did you
right?
say that to your brother too, your twin brother, or just to you?
Well, I'm not sure actually. Um, I have two brothers,
Oh,
and so what's interesting about this is we had a plaque in our kitchen. It was like a gold plaque with like little pictures on it, impressions. And the first one was an ape foot. The second one was a human foot, impressions of a human foot. The second one was an impression of a man's work shoe, like a, dress shoe. And then the fourth impression was an impression of a high heel. And underneath it said the evolution of authority.
wow.
Okay. So my mom was like a 1970s feminist, and she did not teach me how to cook. And she taught my brothers how to cook because she never wanted me to think my place was in the kitchen. Right. So I had the opposite experience of you, Brooke, right? Where she was like, a high level executive. She was actually in college until I was 9, but then she became an executive at Xerox, um and so yeah, I got a lot of messages. I think because she married into a 1950s marriage at 19 years old, and she did what you're doing. She was like, my daughter is not going to have this. And my mom is still kind of in a 1950s marriage, honestly. Like my dad does not know how to do laundry. She does everything.
Mhm.
And she's an executive, right? And so she's like living both, and it's too much. And,
Yeah.
um, anyway, so yeah, so I'm very present to the sort of the opposite story. Um, but there was something else I wanted to say about the messaging that I got. I can't remember what I was going to say, but
Yeah. Well, I was gonna like bring that up is like I think a lot of women, I don't know if Mena or Rachel, you guys were Spice Girl fans, but like it was always like I have this power and like I can have a job full time and I can be an executive, I can do it all. And I think I don't want my daughter to be that either. I don't think she has to be an executive, right? That's not a deem of her success in her life by her title, by how much money she makes, things like that, right? Like that's not the goal because women still had to care for their kids, that just put more on their plate versus saying there was less. My great grandma was a feminist. Like I have her thing in my house and stuff. So I always was really proud of that. And now that I've gotten older, I've been like, I'm proud of you, but the cost of childcare was a lot less when you decided, you wanted to be working, right? And you were still caring, we're still managing the house. Like my great grandfather, like he still couldn't do anything, like you were saying with your dad. And so it's so important we raise boys, but also women who like aren't having a partner who is also an extra child, right? Like that is not
why are
healthy
you
either.
laughing, Minna?
Because I agree. My sister's first fiance was an extra child, and she used to say, "I'm not going to have any kids because I already have one." And
I hear
so,
a lot of women say that. Yeah,
yeah,
that they're
yeah,
a
and
child.
I just that's not what I teach my girls. I'm always like, mm-mm, we're in community and we're going to cooperate with the chores. This is a contribution, not a chore. Let's make it positive and help each other. It's a team.
Yeah, team
Yeah.
effort. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to say. Um, going back to my mom, she's from Los Angeles. She lives in Los Angeles. She wore a ton of makeup when I was growing up. She was very fashion forward and bleach blonde hair and very LA, you know. And I was in high school, I was like, she's so shallow. Like I was like armpits and deadhead and hippie, and I was kind of rebelling against all of that. And she wore very fancy jewelry and diamonds, and I wore hemp, you know, went to UC Santa Cruz. And I went away for my third year abroad. And I was in Israel for the year. And she sent me a birthday present in the mail. And it was pearl earrings. And I opened them and I just cried because I was like, she has no idea who I am. I would never wear these. And the fact that she gave them to me is just like a symbol of her not knowing me or her prioritizing what she wants me to look like and be like. You know, of course, I grew out of that. I wore pearl earrings at my wedding, you know, but I do think that being willing to not to have the kind of relationship with a daughter where you're not projecting who you are or who you want your child to be onto them so that they can be their own person and really listening to who they are through their behavior and their style and whatever they bring to the table.
Yeah, actually, Rachel, just one thing I wanted to add is before when I was like preparing for this too, actually, I wrote teaching moms to be the mom for a daughter that they have, not to be the mom for the daughter that they wanted to have, right? Kind of to do your story is like I really feel like I learned that with Jace, right? With my son, but when I had a daughter, I was more excited, like we can wear matching dresses, we can wear, so cute, my mini me. But then it's like, wait, is that what she really wanted, or was that I wanted to match? Or like, is that a dress I wanted thought would look cute, or is that what she thought is looking cute? And so I think that is so important for moms to come to grips because I thought I was going to be the world's best mom because I was being the mom I wanted to have, but that's not necessarily the mom that my daughter wants to have, right? And those are two different things that I have to balance on myself. Um, so
So I'm loving this conversation. And I just wanted to say, like, something that that stands out for me as a possible experience for women is to create a circle like this where we can grapple with not just parenting girls, but being women and and you like the question that I asked last night in my women's group, like what quality in yourself have you found yourself apologizing for? And where did that come from? And like, and then how does that translate to who you want to be with your daughter? Questions, reflection questions like that could generate really fascinating conversations that inform your parenting, but also help you grow personally. You know, it could be a very interesting opportunity. I don't know. What do you
but
guys
don't
think?
make yourself busy over
I know.
it and take on more.
Well, I mean, what we're exploring here and why we wanted to host this, and the fact that we only have one person here live might be indicative of that this idea has no teeth, right?
Mhm.
Or it's indicative of it's summer and people are busy and they know there's a recording, and so they're just going to catch the recording, right? So then it makes it harder to have a discussion, an honest conversation with a large group of women. So I'm not going to make it mean anything yet, but the intention here was to say, do we want to have a kind of group where we meet monthly, where we have a WhatsApp community to support each other, and maybe we give access to some of the boy mom content that's applicable for girls? Would people like that? Would people pay for that? Is that something that we want to build? Or is this a one-off?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mena, do you have any thoughts? Since you said you
I
work with a
show,
lot of,
I literally show up for women. So that was one of
Yeah.
the things I wanted to know what you guys were doing. And Rachel and I have been around each other. So I was like, I know I know her stuff. I like it. It doesn't always apply to me because it's very boy specific or not my girls specific. So I was very intrigued of the idea. I have always been toying around myself professionally about teaching moms how to talk to their girls about their health and wellness and what the phases of that means. And so that, I would be all for it. I'm other women's cheerleaders, well, I guess I might be multiple in one. But to see the conversation going, I think is really important, because I still see women in clinic where it's always about, I want to lose weight, I want to lose weight, versus reframing to, I want to feel energy, I want to feel flexible, I want to feel empowered in my body. I want to feel healthy, right?
I want to live longer.
Exactly, right. So I always talk about body composition and the health benefits versus, and I think I also see women, it's the weight and calories. And so I love the idea of having conversations with girl moms so that we're reframing how we parent and see ourselves, because I feel like when we're girl moms, we cannot not see ourselves, right? Because, or analyze if we're critical and self-aware, right? But I think girls make moms become self-aware because we've been a girl, and we know what's to come. And so I've had a conversation also with a therapist. She actually, I think she's a psychologist, is her title, where we were talking about eating disorders in girls and how we need to be teaching them sooner about nutrition and what it means to eat and what that does in the fuel to our body. So um, the conversation to me is interesting, absolutely. But I'm just me, I'm mom of four girls, so obviously I'm very invested in girl talk and women talk.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I feel like, in order for you to have really rich dialogues that kind of go beyond just parenting girls and into what you're talking about of how do we show up as women so that we're role modeling something really healthy and powerful for our daughters and also growing ourselves. I feel like to have a really good conversation, we probably need like 10 moms
Mhm.
to create a circle, like a women's circle of girl moms. So I'm just going to name that in case anyone's listening to the recording, and we're probably going to send out a survey afterwards asking people, what's your interest in this so that we can gauge that. But yeah, thank you so much for coming, Minna, and thank you, Brooke, for creating this space for us.
Yeah, there's just a few little takeaways I just want to make
Yeah.
sure if that's okay before we all hop off. Is I just wanted to share three books that for those who have girls that they can read on their own to just learn. One is Enough as She Is by Rachel Simmons. The second is Gift of Failure by Jessica Lahey. That's about, perfectionism in girls, which we all were talking about earlier for ourselves, actually. And then the last is Untangled by Lisa D'Amour. That was the one that is like, Rachel, I think you explained it as like the pinnacle book about raising a daughter, because we see so much of ourselves in our daughters and how to make it we're separate, who we are and versus our daughters, and not to get involved. And then the last thing for closing, I think, is just want to leave everyone who's listening and who walk away from this is just we're not raising girls who are easy to parent. That's not our goal, right? We're raising women who will one day just navigate these complexities of the world that, well, now with technology, with relationships, with dressing, their weight, all of this, and help them, like Rachel said earlier, just really make sure they can think critically and speak respectfully and recover from failure easily and just know their worth from the minute they're born until the day they die. I think that's really important for us to be raising these type of girls. And so if we can do all that, we'll have an incredible women for the future. And that's for me personally, I want to try and raise my daughter in that way.
And
So
I'm going to say something.
yes.
Can you put that slide back up?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you see it?
Not yet. There it is. Okay. I want that for the moms.
Mm.
Mhm.
Because if we are thinking critically, speaking respectfully to them, recovering from failure ourselves, knowing our worth, we are being extraordinary for our girls and ourselves and the world. you know.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's an opportunity for me that I saw, or a possibility that I saw open up today that's really inspiring.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel, for joining. And thank you, Mena, for being here. We really appreciate you showing up for women today. Literally.
Yeah. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Good luck with the World Cup, everybody. And we'll be in touch.
Great.
All right. Take
Thanks,
care.
Mena.
Bye.
Bye.